Time now to shift to track and field once again and talk about Delethea Quarles. And here to tell us about her, head track and field coach Brant Tolsma.
Delethea Quarles. I first saw that name when I was in my early 30s at Campbell University on a prospect form. And if I recall correctly, she was listed as a 15.2 hurdler who had about a 5-foot high jump and maybe a 17-something long jump. And it occurred to me, even though none of those marks stood out that much, I thought, she might be a good heptathlete. So I got her phone number, called her up, and told her that I thought if she came to Campbell, she could become an All-American heptathlete. I don't think she believed me, but she found it interesting that I thought. I seemed to believe myself. And long story short, she ended up there at Campbell. We had a good time the first 2 years that we were there, and when I came up to Liberty, she came up here with me. And all the athletes that I've coached, there's a few that really stand out as those who are really a joy to coach, and Delethea Quarles was one of them. We developed a very strong coach-athlete bond, and I was trying to think, just this week, I was trying to think why that was. And as I thought about it, the reason was that she believed in me. She had faith in what I would tell her to do. And I'll tell you just one little story to illustrate that. Mike Decker remembers the famous workout we called the 864. It consisted of running an 800 almost as hard as you could, not quite, but almost. 20 minutes later, we'd run a 600, and then 20 minutes later, we'd run a 400, and that would be as hard as you could possibly run it. And I kept records on those workouts for years because I don't like change, so we did the same thing a lot. And one time I was studying all the records, looking at people's PRs, and Delethea had run that workout in 5:10 a couple of times, and that was about the same level I had at the time. I used to do the workout, so we'd be really close. But I knew her PRs, and I had done some calculations on some of her best runners, and I calculated that she should be able to run that workout in 5:04. And I remember I told her, I said, Dee, according to my calculations in your PRs from races, you should be able to run a 5:04. A 5:10 is like a 2:30 800 followed by a 1:40 600 followed by a 60-second quarter, which is a pretty good workout for a girl. But I remember her arguing with me. She's like, no, she knew I've run as fast as I could. I can't go any faster, And I said, well, according to my calculations, and she said, I can't do it. But then the next week she went out and she just tried and she ran a 5:04. And I said, see? And then she kind of believed it. Now, I've also had the great opportunity of watching her faith in God grow. First at Campbell, she was active in our FCA and not quite so sure, I think, at that time of exactly what she believed, but then when she came here to Campbell, she sat under Dr. Falwell, to Liberty, I should say. She sat under Dr. Falwell for several years, because while she was an athlete, she did go on to be All-American 2 times in heptathlon. She also won the Penn relays and the hurdles and had a lot of good athletic experiences, but she stayed on to train part-time and then started coaching part-time at Liberty and then eventually ended up coaching full-time at Liberty. Delethea was at Liberty during the lean days, which some of you older people remember. Jeff Meyer surely remembers the lean days. But now I often say Liberty's like Egypt backwards. Egypt had 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, but we've had a decade of famine followed by, now we're in a decade of plenty. But she was here during the lean years where we didn't have much at all. In fact, in 1995, or end of 94, they cut our staff from 3 coaches to 2 coaches. And it was just me and Dee, and we had one office. And that year, we won all the Big South championships in track, and we also got second in the IC4A, which was just a miracle. But as I think back, I didn't realize it at the time, but as I think back, it just reminded me how, the horse is made ready for the day of battle, but victory comes from the Lord. But I got to watch Dee continually growing in her faith, and during that time, some colleges came courting for her to coach, like Virginia and I think it was Iowa, and she turned them all down. But when she was finally ready, God sent South Carolina after her, and she knew that he was calling her there, and her faith was strong enough at that time to go and have an impact in the world. She went to South Carolina and helped them, their girls team, win the national championship in 2002, and then since that time, she's gone on to be a USA coach 7 times. She's coached USA athletes at 2 world championships, 1 World Cup, but still, despite all those great accomplishments, Delethea Quarles is still a Liberty girl. So let's welcome Delethea Quarles.
Ooh. I'm going to be honest with y'all. I know all the rest of the inductees have been nervous, so I'm going to go ahead and speak for them. They was nervous too. I give honor to God, my Savior, all I know. And I stand before you today just wanting to explain to you how powerful this place is. And I know over the 8 years as a coach and the years I was a student here, you know what, you kind of take some things for granted until God call you away from here. And I just wanted to give you just a few things. I know it's getting late, and the good thing about being first is everybody hear what you said. And the bad thing about being last is like, man, let's hurry up and get out of here. So I'm gonna try to be brief with you. I first wanna thank my parents. I just want to share with you, I did just lose my father in April, so he was a rock to my family. He's one of my best friends, and it's kind of funny when I listen to Wayne talk. You sure we're not from the same family? Because some of the things you said was very similar, and I'm grateful to all the things. I could really sit up here and give you an entire sermon on my dad, but I'm grateful for him and the example and the rock and the provider and the man of God he was to our family and the leader. I just want to introduce you a little bit to my family here. I have a lot of family here. I was really surprised for how many people said they wanted to come to my induction. But I have my mother here, and this whole table here is my immediate family. Doretha, Dolores, my sister and Deborah, and my brother Rudy, and my brother-in-law Spencer, and my significant other, Michael. I'm grateful that you guys came here with me today. I would just like to tell you that I have so much emotion to be back here. And today my prayer was, God, could you just calm my nerves down so I can speak? That's how emotional it's been for me to be back in this place. I had the privilege to being invited back last year to the athletic chapel to speak, but I wasn't able to visit the entire university. I visited yesterday, and I cried and was so emotional over how much God has blessed this place. And of course, to see all the things that Dr. Falwell used to talk about over and over and over, and to see this thing happening is phenomenal. So I just want to share with you a little bit today, and I thank God for all of the faces from the past, that all you guys that was here when I was here. You invested in my life. Some of you, I can't remember your names, but I know you by your face. Nancy, it's good to see you. Coach Myers, great to see you, Coach. just people that it's been around that care about you. I feel honored that I am recognized in the same sentence as some of these people that's been inducted, but especially Coach, the one that started track and field here, if I'm not mistaken. When I came here, Coach Mathis was the man that started track and field. And I think Coach Tolsma had been sought out quite a few times before he decided to come. And I remember when we came, Coach Mathis was carrying athletes in a station wagon to wherever we can find to work out. We, of course, didn't have all these nice facilities here, and of course, I can go into some stories that only the track people can laugh about, so I'll just reserve that for tonight. But nevertheless, I would like to thank my family for my lifetime of support that they've given me in my coaching career. And it started here. It started here, and actually it started at Campbell. I'll just have to tell you, the foundation of my career was started with Coach Tolsma. When he wrote me and talked about the heptathlon thing, I didn't even know what a heptathlon was. But I was in his letter, he said, I know you're probably wondering, what's a heptathlon? And I was like, yeah, this man's reading my mind. But nevertheless, he recruited me, and I did believe in Coach, but what he didn't tell you guys is he's a numbers man. He's an engineer. And you know, for every distance that we ran out there, every hill that we ran, he had a calculation and a formula for it. And, you know, sometimes we hated that because he was going to predict what we were going to be able to do. But nevertheless, there were a lot of times that Coach would come up with some of the craziest concoctions to get us to be better at what we were doing. So all I can say is I know that I'm indebted to him and the beginning I had with you at Coach at Campbell, and then I followed him here because I did believe in the man that he was, and not just as a coach. He was a Christian man, and I remember him inviting like the freshmen over to his house. He would take a few at a time so that, you know, Mrs. Tolsma didn't get too mad at him, but he would invite us over, and, you know, it was just that example that I left home with. You know, God led me there under his leadership, and that, oh, wow, you know, I'm here with some people that love the Lord. And I know we sometimes used to get upset with Coach Tolsma just on how honest this man was. It was just like, man, Coach can't even lie about nothing. And so, but his family was an example to the whole track team. And, you know, some people there were Christians, some people were not. And I think our entire team looked up to him because of his stand about who God was in his life. And, you know, when you first leave home, you kind of want to part from what you've been taught. And I found myself at FCA meetings, and, you know, Coach was a sponsor or a leadership for that. So I just have to say that God has directed my path, and he has placed me around the right people in every place that I've been. And Coach Tolsma, I came here with him, and, you know, Dr. Falwell, I think, you know, had sought out Coach Tolsma a couple times, and he finally answered and said he would come. And I didn't realize when I got here that, you know, they had pumped us up so much that we had to do something great when we got here. But we had better resources here than where we were, and there was always there was these special people around in our life, like Coach Mathis, which he said, you know, I'm ready to get out this thing. So he passed the baton to Coach Tolsma. And then, oh, there was the weight room. Coach Gillespie, Coach Williams, they are not telling you a story about squat till you drop. And I always remember Coach Williams saying, cooperate and graduate. That was his saying. And it was like, get it together, you young people. And they meant, when you came in the weight room, they meant business. So it takes a family of people to do great things. And me and Coach Tolsma was talking yesterday and today, and, you know, for all the success that you are allowed to have on earth, it's like you can't, you don't realize how great it is because you're just, you know, you're chasing the next weekend, or you're chasing that time to be better, and it's really great to have, God have allowed us to accomplish the things we have. The things I learned from Coach Tolsma when we got here is how to be creative, how to run a program, how to keep your standards as a man or woman of God, and don't get twisted into the pressures and sometimes what the world can make a pressure to you, and that, you always have God in the stands watching you. That was, as a young coach, when I left here, accountability is a huge thing in sports, and it's a huge thing in life. And I just know the young people can't fake it till you make it with them. They know how you're living. They know if you're real. They know if you care. And Coach Tolsma is really the person that was the example to me, even at times that maybe I didn't know which direction I was going. He was the example to me of getting here and the start of my career. One or two more things I want to tell you about my time here, because I can tell you about all the great conferences we won and how successful we were as a track program, but it really was under Dr. Falwell's teaching and the chapel services that we sit through and the messages and all the great teachings and the many people here that has been scholars for like Bible scholars in the classes that I sit through and that minor in that you got in Bible before you left here. Those are the things that impacted my life because, I was raised as a Christian. I accepted Christ as a teenager, but it wasn't until I really got here that I learned the Word of God to back what I was taught and to find out who Jesus was to me and for me. And so this place is a remarkable place. Dr. Falwell himself, it wasn't like there were many times that he and I sat together, but I did have the privilege of meeting him one-on-one a few times. And he was very aware, of course, of the things that we did on the track and our pin relays and all the great times we had up there. And those are the times that he made way to me. And I remember after being here for 8 years as a coach, with Coach Tolsma, as he mentioned, that we were in this very small office next to each other working, and which my family probably remembers that, Mom in particular. But I got many job opportunities, and I didn't accept those opportunities because Liberty, one, is home for me, but two, I didn't want to go to a place that I had to compromise my faith. And that was important to me. It had always been important to me. And so as I got all these offers and people telling you what a great coach you are and how you needed to leave and when are you going to leave Little Liberty, that is the reason I stayed. Until one day, God called me out, and Dr. Falwell, which I think it's only been in the last 2 years that Coach Tolsma knew about this. And Dr. Falwell called me to his office and he said, I've heard that you had an interview at the University of South Carolina. And he said, Dee, I just want to know if you feel like it's time for you to go out and move on, or do you want to stay here and continue to assist in the program here with Coach Tolsma? And if there's something I can do to keep you here, then please let me know that. And of course, I had prayed about this thing, and after all these many interviews, of course I've prayed, and Dr. Falwell, he didn't call me in to tell me what to do. He came to me as a spiritual father to say, what is God calling you to do? And I told Dr. Falwell I had been praying about it, and I've been praying over the last few years about, what he would have me to do. And I told him, I said, well, Dr. Falwell, God is calling me out. And he gave me his blessings to go out and preach the gospel. And so that's how I got to the University of South Carolina. I've been there for 18 years now. God has certainly blessed my career. I've had a lot of success there. And as Coach just told you, all the USA teams I've been on. This was my beginning, and this was my foundation that I'm able to do the things that I'm doing. And really, it's God's hand on my life. It's really not anything about me. It's that he chose me. And he has an assignment for me, just like he does everybody in this room. And it was just his grace and his favor that's on my life that he chose for me to do what I'm doing. And if it wasn't for this place and the vision of Dr. Falwell, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't be where I'm at. I've had to call up so many things that I've learned here to survive sometimes in my environment, but to be also successful. It's a tremendous pressure to be a coach. And I, again, want to thank my family for their unconditional love to me and just all that comes with this thing in athletics. The passion for young people is a very huge responsibility, especially in this day and age. And I'm so grateful for that. And all the coaches and that's been here to support me in my years as an athlete and even as I was a coach here, and all the things that gave us the ingredients to be successful, I'm grateful for. I'm very honored and very humble that the committee, thank you for voting me in. And I've been around the world, and nothing has been more exciting than to come back home and to be honored. And this is like my Olympics, and I'm grateful for it and to it. And I'm sure I left out some points, but the last one I do want to give you is Coach Hopkins. I can't leave this platform without speaking about him. I think Becky is here, and Kevin. Coach Hopkins always tried to make way for me. He's the one that actually hired me first, part-time. And he's a very excitable man, and he was always more than on time. And Coach, you remember, and he always he had a passion for what he did. He had a passion for young people, and before he passed away, it was only about 2 months, and I had worked with Coach Hopkins for a year, and I had decided I was going to move on. And just before he died, he said, well, Dia, we really wish we can have you here full time. And I wish I could, find a way to keep you here. And he was always trying to find a way. Well, just before he passed, he told me he was still working on it. And I was going to move on to Richmond to live with my sisters and decide to go back to school a little bit later. And unfortunately, maybe I should say fortunate, Coach Hopkins passed away. I think it was 3 days before school started that particular year. And I just take it as, at first, I didn't look at it this way, but his death is what gave me life to my career. And I just like to think that the desire of his heart was given by God. And God decided to take him home. And that's what started my career here. I never questioned my calling. I had another direction I wanted to go. I thank God for the influence that Coach Tolsma has had in my life. I have always believed in him. And I just thank God brought us here for me to be better at what I was doing, but to showcase the world how great Coach Tolsma coach he was. And I tell you, the whole world was buzzing after we won IC4As, which probably pulled me away from here, because it was miraculous, because a small Christian school that only been in existence in 1977 don't do things like that. And so we won, and every coach in the country started calling me, and that's what called me out, but God called me to where he called me to. And I just want to say thank you, committee, thank you, Liberty University, Coach Tolsma, I love you. And he's a family member for as long as I've been knowing him. And the rest of my family that's traveled from Philly, DC, all over, thank you for coming. Richmond, and some of my longtime friends that's come from Liberty, I thank you for your spiritual support throughout the years that I've been gone from here. And I'll just say this. Some people say that some jobs are a stepping stone. And I've said this in my interview back at USC. I'm grateful for every person that has invested in my life, in every place that's given me an opportunity that's made me who I am today. No place for me has been a stepping stone, but a place that has prepared me for this next thing that God has called me to do. Thank you for your attention, and thank you again, committee, and I love you all.